Friends, I am super honored today to have my friend John Stolpe. John is the Stretched blogger. He is a Christ follower, a husband, and a father. He writes about leadership, parenting, marriage, and faith. And he also wrote this really cool book, for those of you on camera can see it. It's called On Track, Life Lessons from the Track and Field by John M. Stolpe. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rocco. It's a privilege and an honor to be on your show, and Dad Makes Seven.
Isn't that cool? I have a show. I love it. And I've got John Stolpe on here. Awesome. John, I appreciate you coming on the show here. So as we talked in pre-show, we kind of have two objectives for this conversation, and they're going to intertwine. And we're just two Christian guys, two Christian dads, learning from each other and sharing some stories. First thing I want to get into today is I want to talk about this book, and it's a good book. It's like 50 pages. It's a quick read. I read it, and I read slow, so it was like 2 hours. So then I took notes, and I dog-eared it and all this stuff here. What I like about it is, first of all, John, you are you're a runner, and I'm a runner, and I like running. I jumped ahead. I'm going to come back here. I just got a little ahead of myself. I get excited doing these things. I want you to introduce yourself a little bit more, and then I'm going to get into this. Look at what I did. I just stepped all over my guest.
No, it's fine. I'm glad you're excited, and I'm excited to be here. My name is John Stolpe, and I am an engineer by background. I got my engineering degree from a small Christian school out in Western Pennsylvania. I guess that's out here, out east compared to where you are.
That's far.
Yeah.
Where's Pennsylvania?
So while I was at Grove City College, I met my wife, Leanne, and we dated long distance for a couple of years. And then after I graduated, because she was still at the school, and then we ended up getting married after she graduated, and we moved to the Philadelphia area. And I've been working at a construction company doing building automation for over 20 years now.
Wow.
And it's been a good climb, but we're active. We have two kids. They're both teenagers. Our daughter is 18 and getting ready for college. That's kind of crazy. And our son is 15. So we have one of each, the rich man's family, as they say. And
Boy,
they
two
keep us
kids,
on
that's
the
nothing.
go. You're right.
Like, man, oh, if only.
Yeah, the funny thing is we had talked about having 4 or 5 or 6 kids at one point when we first got married. And then we had Hannah, and she was a great kid, great first one. And then Isaac came along. And then shortly after Isaac came along, my wife had an illness that caused her to have hospitalization and, just some long recovery. And it was at that point we realized that maybe 2 was enough.
Yeah. I realize that every day, man. 2 is enough.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I like to write on the side. It's funny because I obviously, as an engineer, I always liked math and science, and I did okay at English and some of the humanities type courses, but that wasn't really where my passion was. In fact, I struggled to keep up with some of my classmates who were, more advanced in that area. I did go through honors English and that kind of stuff, but I never thought that I would enjoy writing or speaking for that matter.
Right. Engineers aren't supposed to like either one of those, right?
That's right. We're not supposed to. We're supposed to be serious. Well, I am pretty serious, but we're supposed to be math, science guys, and that's it. But at any rate, my dad's a pastor. I should tell you that. I probably didn't tell you that before, but my dad is a pastor, and he's a writer. He's written several things, and I can remember him helping me through my senior honors English course as I struggled to overcome my first and only ever D in a marking period. And, he was a big help. I ended up with a B in the class, so that's not too bad.
Yay, Dad.
But, I never thought that I would follow in his footsteps as far as the writing goes, and even the speaking. He speaks very regularly, and now I've had a lot of opportunity to speak as a result of some of my writing. And I've had an opportunity, obviously, to write. I've had my blog for over 8.5 years.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's allowed me to connect with so many people. I mean, people in California, people in Washington, people across the pond, all kinds of places. It's been
Wow. Now
pretty.
your blog says you write 5 days a week. Have you been pretty consistent with that?
You know what? I need to edit that because I was very consistent in that. But after talking to a friend of ours, Ellery Wells, who
Yeah.
you we decided together. I decided. He helped me decide, though, that I probably need to step back and drop back from that commitment of posting 5 days a week. So right
That's a
now,
lot.
I'm aiming for more like 3 days a week, and using those other 2 days to help with some of the writing projects that I'm hoping to accomplish over the next year.
Oh, that's great. That's a little teaser there. That's awesome. Yeah, 5 days a week is. I do one. I do a podcast too, but I mean, I write. That's I. I don't know. I don't know how you do it. That's so 3 days. Even 3 days a week just seems like way too much.
I think for me, I've always been somebody who's been disciplined. So if I get into a pattern of doing something, a
Yeah.
habit of doing something, it becomes easier. And for anybody listening, if you've ever thought about doing a blog or a podcast for that matter, really consistency is the big key.
Yeah.
If you can be consistent, suddenly it will become a little bit easier. Suddenly you'll have more ideas to share, you'll have more things to write about or more things to talk about. And I've definitely discovered that.
Well, you say discipline. You talk about discipline, and this book really fits right. There's a good segue there. I always ruin my segues by saying, "Oh, look at that's a segue." I'm just that kind of a guy, but it is a great segue because your book really is. I read the book, and this is like a great framework, a great foundation of forming discipline. And I looked at it more from a spiritual aspect because that's just where I'm at in my life. But I think the good thing about the book is that it really could speak to most people in different areas of their life. If it's school and of course fitness, running. I mean that's a big piece of what the uses running, track and field as that. Let's kind of jump into let's walk through the book a little bit, and then we'll get to the sort of the second part that we wanted to talk about today.
Sure.
Um, so tell me about how the book came about and when you wrote it and what led you up to using this track and field as the foreground for your book.
Sure. It's funny because I ran in high school a little bit, and the only reason I ran in high school was because I had some friends who ran and I wanted to hang out with them. I hated running. I despised it. I really did. And I can remember before a big meet or a race or something like that, you know where you could find me? Down in the bathroom, emptying my guts because
Oh
I was
man.
just so nervous, and I just did not like that experience. So when I finished that, I enjoyed basketball. My height, I'm tall. I'm almost 6'6", and in the basketball court, I didn't have to do that kind of running. I could run up and down the court and back and forth. And eventually I learned how to dunk, which is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But at any rate, it wasn't until I had two kids and they were young and my metabolism started slowing down. I work at a desk a lot of the time. And I started noticing this bulge developing around my midsection.
What is
And I was
that?
like, oh my goodness, I need to do something about this. So I started running around the neighborhood and I would run a mile or two, and I thought I was doing fantastic.
Oh,
And
bless your
nothing
heart.
was happening as far as my weight goes. But at any rate, I was probably running too fast too. One of my real good friends, Joe, invited me to run with him. He and his wife and a friend were training for the Philadelphia Distance Run, which is a half marathon.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, okay. And he goes, oh, come on, we're going to run 9 miles on Saturday. I'm like, 9 miles? You got to be kidding
Yeah.
me. So somehow, this was several years ago, but somehow I went along with him on this
From
training
the
run.
2 mile to the 9 mile. I mean, you
Right.
nothing in between.
No.
Holy
And
smokes.
believe it or not, I smoked those guys in the 9 mile training
Whoa.
run, and I did a great job. And I was like, wow, I can do this.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I signed up for the half marathon and I ran that. And then, wouldn't you know, at the finish line, some lady who I never met before, have never seen since, comes up to me and she goes, hey, congratulations. Was this your first half marathon? I was like, yeah. She must have been able to tell by my running clothes and my sweat and my just the general appearance I had. But she goes, well, you should run a full
There we
marathon.
go. I knew that
I'm
was
like,
coming.
you got to be kidding me. But wouldn't you know, now I've run 5 or 6 half marathons. I've run 3 full marathons, and I enjoy running. I ran 6 miles this morning.
Oh, awesome.
I run an average of probably 30 or so miles a week now. But where the track and field thing comes in, my kids at one point, both of them ran track and field. And my son doesn't do it any longer, but my daughter is really into it. She
Okay.
her cross country team this year finished fourth in the states, which is fantastic. She was the
Yeah.
captain of the team. I love being at their meets. I love going to the track, all that. So I started watching what was going on as my kids were running, and I noticed things happening. And of course, with me writing, I'm an observer of life. So I
Yep.
started writing a couple of blog posts about some of the things I observed. And I didn't think anything about those blog posts. They were there. I wrote a few of them. And then I was starting to process the possibility of writing a book. And I wanted to tackle something pretty large that I have an outline for another topic, another time. But I realized that I needed to do something a little bit smaller. And so for some reason, I started paging through some of my archives of some of the stuff I've written. And I realized that I had written a few things on track and field, and maybe that was a good place to go because it includes my passion. I mean, I
Yeah.
like to run. And so I started playing with those things. And before you know it, I had a book. I had 8 chapters, an introduction, and 8 chapters
Like,
that
look at
deal with,
this.
yeah, it was really cool. Things like the first chapter is all about starting blocks. And
Yeah.
I talk about how I basically use that as a metaphor to talk about how, when a runner lines up at the starting blocks, they have to be dressed appropriately. You don't see somebody wearing combat boots and you don't see somebody wearing like heavy clothing. They're dressed to run. They want to
Yes.
be as light as possible.
Because
And
the title of the chapter was Prepare. Or was it? I don't know if there was a title. It was
it
Starting
might have
Block.
been this, yeah,
Oh,
it
there we
was
go.
called starting blocks. But at any rate, with that, um, that there's lessons from the starting blocks. Start where you are and use what you have, do what you can. That's a quote by Arthur Ashe. And with dressing appropriately, I crossed that over to Ephesians 6 and talking about how we as Christians need to make sure we're wearing the armor of God. And so there's a couple other places I went with the starting blocks, and one is
Okay, one second. Can you go back to that? Sorry to cut you off, John.
no, absolutely.
I actually had a note here. I heard this. So we were talking off the air about the surrender concept, but we were also last night at church talking about this armor of God thing. And then I'm coming through here and I'm preparing for this, and I'm like, there it is again. And these things are not coincidences, right? God is talking to us through this stuff. So, um, can you elaborate just a little more? I know you're not a theologian, but on what you mean by this armor of God, because I didn't have a chance to ask the guys last night.
Yeah, so in Ephesians 6, the Apostle Paul tells us, he says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And then he goes on to talk about some of the things that you need to put on. And so he talks about putting on the belt of truth buckled around your waist, and the breastplate of righteousness in place, and your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. And then he talks about the shield of faith. Now he's using these, the armor analogy to help you know that you need to be in God's word, that you need to be ready, and that you need to be having faith. He talks about all those things. And I think as believers, it'd be easy for us to go into the world and just say, all right, we're just going to go in and see how it works out.
We're
But
gonna
I
wing
think
it.
Right, but I think that God's calling us to a lot more, and the Apostle Paul is telling us to make sure that we're being intentional with how we go out into the world. And for me, I think that that starts with a discipline of, being in God's Word. I think it starts with surrounding yourself with people who are going to encourage you. So, if I'm going to head into an area where I might be tempted, I hope that I have a couple guys who are right by me to say, "Whoa, John, no, that's not where you need to be," or
Yeah.
I'm going to help encourage you and keep you on the right path. So I think there's a lot of places you can go with just that passage. I would encourage anybody listening to go into Ephesians 6, dig into that and process what it means for you, and what is God trying to teach you. What do you need to be doing to make sure you're prepared for the race that God has set out for you?
That's a power. Thank you. That was that was actually really good. I like how you explained it, and that is something I'm going to meditate more on. Is that passage right there? Because when we're talking to guys, this is that's a big deal. I love it. So you go in to the next section. You talk about, may have been before or after, but the other thing I wrote here to focus on is this idea of being still, and that's
You
that's
know,
what we don't do very good at, is it?
oh man, I suck at that. Honestly, I am so busy. And when a runner comes up to the starting blocks, let me start with frame it that way.
Yeah.
When they actually get down into the blocks, they have to be completely still. Otherwise, they'll be disqualified. They
Oh,
also
I didn't
won't,
know that.
right, and they also will not hear the instructions or hear the gun go off when so that they're ready to actually run the race. And I think that, it's a great analogy for life as dads, especially, you've got an active family. I've got a very active family too. And we are running all the time. And so often we fail to take time to just be still and to listen to
Mm-hmm.
what God might have for us. I listen to so many podcasts. I read so many blogs, and then I'm doing everything else I need to do for my work or for my family, and it's rare that I take time to be still. I know we talked about this before we got on the recording, but I started a 7-week stretch challenge on my blog, and it's a way. I'll give you the link so that your readers can sign up for it. But the first week of that 7-week challenge is all about still yourself and being still. And so it's funny, that is a
Wow.
theme that seems to come back to me over and over and over again. My dad is a pastor, and he shared with me, one of the times I posted about this, he shared with me something that somebody taught him, great advice about taking regular Sabbaths, learning to take 1 minute every hour for Sabbath, take 1 hour every day for Sabbath, take one day every week for Sabbath. And you could take that to wherever you want
Yeah.
to. But I think that if we could learn to do that, it
Oh,
would be amazing.
wow.
But we don't. I don't know about you, but I struggle with that.
I sometimes I'm lucky. I've been lucky lately, almost because I had to force myself to get that hour in the morning, a good clean hour. I wake up before the chickens and the roosters and all that, to pray and to be in the Word. And I guess that's and I've been pretty good with that consistent lately. Without that, I'd go crazy. And the days that I wake up late or I something happens and I don't have that, I'm frazzled. I'm going nuts. But even the other thing you said is that once an hour. That to me is that's just as important as taking that prayer time in the morning, taking that time to stop all throughout the day so you don't just slide through the day. That you stop, calm down, bring it back, remember Jesus, set it on your phone or whatever, and then go back to your day.
I have a good friend of mine who's Jewish, and he connected with me through my blog. He's a blogger who blogs about one of the communities real close to me, And somehow he found me, connected with me, and we get together not as often as I'd like to, or he would like to, I'm sure. But one of the things I value about him and his friendship is that the Sabbath is very important to he and his wife. And when the sun goes down on Friday night, that's the beginning of Sabbath, and they don't go out, they don't do anything until the
Wow.
sun goes down Saturday night, and they really take time to just to read, to rest, to reflect,
Oh,
and it's a
I
good
just that's
example
just
for me.
like a warm blanket. I'm like, oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, I think we're both entrepreneurs, even though we both have other jobs that we keep.
Yeah.
There's just this tendency to run, 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 hustle, 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 keep going, keep going, keep going. And we need to fight that.
Yes. Yes. Our identity. Oh goodness. Cliff Ravenscraft. I just listened to an episode. I think it's about a month ago. He was or a few weeks ago. You nodded your head, so you know. I think you may know the episode. It was like he's having this identity crisis or whatever, and he talks about how his identity is caught up in what he's putting out, what his output and everything. And I shared that with he was very vulnerable with his audience, and I listened to that maybe like 2 hours ago today, and it's just wow. Our identity is in Christ, not in how many episodes I put out or how many blog posts or how many downloads or any of that stuff. It's in Christ. And I could say this all day long, and I'm going to take this part of the video and I'm going to put it on a loop so I just watch it all day long. And it's still, I'm going to forget about it. Tomorrow I'm going to forget about it. Why is that?
I think if we tattooed it on our foreheads, it might work. Because I know we probably both look in the mirror every day.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's just so much power to that. So yeah, I really liked. I wrote a big note here to like this the being still thing. And I like that the Sabbath. If when I write the show notes here, I'll make sure I focus on this. The Sabbath every hour, the Sabbath every minute. Did we say that? Sabbath every hour, Sabbath
1
every
minute
day.
every hour, 1 hour every day,
Okay.
1 day every
So
week.
not every minute. That may be asking too much.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
I have to drive. That's funny. Oh man. So I'm going to move on to training unless I miss something.
Yeah,
Jump in if I move too fast. So the training part, there's a couple things you talk about. Some Bible apps and planning and I wrote small groups here. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but just having people around you and can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, it's funny. I know we're going to twist and turn on this. I had mentioned something about my wife going through some tough times earlier. And I can remember, several years ago, she was going through some challenges. And I used to be, for a while, I was the small groups guy at my church as far as one of the big promoters. I wasn't the small groups pastor, but I definitely took a major lead in small groups. If you look back at my blog archives, you'll see a lot of stuff about small groups. And a friend of mine, as I was going through this challenging time, came up to me and he noticed that I wasn't doing so well. And he said something to me. He said, "John, are you doing okay? Are you plugged into a group?" And I said, "You know what, Adam, I'm not doing real well. And I'm not plugged into a group right now. I'm not plugged into that kind of community." And he said, "Well, you need to. I have a group that they called Meet, Men Eating and Talking."
Oh, I love it. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so great.
And so he said, "We're going to meet at the diner. We meet there every week this time, whatever. You're coming next time." And I said, "All right, well, I'll see." And,
Uh-oh.
and sure
International
enough,
man code for no, I'm not coming.
but no, I actually showed up, and it came at a real good time for me. Those guys helped spur me on. There's a verse in Hebrews 10, actually 24 and 25, that talks about don't give up meeting together, but remember how you can spur each other on towards love and good deeds. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that for me is a verse that I really hang on to, because I know that there's such value in meeting together with fellow people. I meet with a group of guys now every Friday morning at 6 a.m.
Oh
in
wow.
somebody's basement. We call our groups Dibs, dudes in the basement.
Oh man, you and your acronyms, and I
Right.
love it.
And we've committed to meet together for 20 straight years
Wow,
every week. And so we just made it over the year mark in October, and we're well into the second year.
man.
And there's been a few changes, but for the most part, the group is intact, and we are growing and getting to know each other better. And it's been a neat experience. So
Is this
I'm
organized through the church?
it's I think all the guys except one or two go to my church. Yeah.
Okay, this I'm digging this idea because I, and I've shared with you my small group or men's Bible study. I don't know where I would be with the stuff I've been going through. I don't know where I'd be without these guys. I just I can't imagine. So anyone listening or watching this that doesn't know what a small group is, could you give the quick Reader's Digest version? I mean, you kind of did, but of how to find a small group.
Well, I would start first of all at your church. Most churches have small groups, and you may not know it. Simply ask.
Yeah,
They're probably there. If they're not there, then go grab some people
yeah,
and just start meeting together. It may be an affinity group. It may be something where you guys all like to play tennis or something. So grab other people who like to play tennis. Go play tennis and grab a cup of coffee afterwards.
it's so
And
important to be plugged in.
yeah, and plug into each other. It could be other things too. There's actually, believe it or not, at my church, you may agree or disagree with this, but there's a group for Texas Hold'em players.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity. There's many people who come to that group who wouldn't come to church or wouldn't come to a Bible study group,
Yeah.
but it's a place where they can connect, and then from there,
Oh,
hopefully
that's so
grow
great.
into a
That is
into a
so
group.
good. So the lesson there is it shouldn't be too hard to find a small group and to find a place to plug in this day and
Right.
age. If you're savvy enough to be watching this or listening to this, you know how to find a small group. If you don't know how to get to a podcast, then well, you're not hearing us anyways.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that we were made for community. Even if you're an extra, if you're an extrovert or an introvert, I still strongly believe that we were all made to be in community. And so we just have to seek
I
it out.
agree.
It's
I
there.
agree. Absolutely agree. So you were going somewhere. I don't know if you remember where you were going. I did cut you off. This is like the third
Uh-uh.
time. You're probably
Yeah,
gonna reach through the computer and slap me. I keep
no,
doing
I
that.
would never do that. So in the training chapter, I know you talked about that. I talked about following a plan, and that's where I mentioned things like the daily audio Bible podcast that I listen to every day. The uversion.com has some great stuff. I tell you what, that uversion thing is fantastic. The Craig Groeschel's church and the investment that they put into that whole package is fantastic. It's reaching people all over the world.
It's free. I cannot believe that thing is free. It's like
Yeah,
the most robust app ever.
and there's many plans there. So you could follow a 365-day plan, or you could follow a 3-day plan to get plugged in. Where I relate it to the running world is that when I ran marathons, when I trained for marathons, I followed a 16-week plan to
Yeah.
prepare me for the marathons and handling that distance. Those those workouts that I had to do included long distance runs. They included hill workouts. They even included rest days. And I think that it's just important for us to follow a plan if we really want to grow. You have to be intentional about being intentional.
Yes, yes, and going into the marathon, I know we want to get into the mission stuff. Definitely, I want to talk. As a marathon runner, although I haven't ran one in 2 years, I want to talk about your marathons and the Ready Set Go chapter. Really, a couple things in here that like it's like yeah. This is so good that you need to be able to survive a marathon, but also more importantly, to survive life. So you talk about. I want to hear a little bit about your 2 marathons, right?
I've done 3 actually
Okay,
now. So
okay, cool. And you so tell us a little bit about that, and then some of the I'm just the cheering section. I love the cheering section thing. But walk us through your marathon experience.
Let's see here. Well, the first marathon I did was the Philadelphia Marathon, and I was trained up pretty well to do that. I was in good shape, and I still remember. And most people talk about the wall that they hit somewhere after mile
Mile
mark,
two. Oh, mile.
mile. Oh, right, mile 20, right?
Mine was about 16 when I knew I
Yeah,
had 10 miles left, and I'm like, I can't walk 10 more feet.
right. And so I remember I was on pace to break through my goal. My goal was 4 hours. Depending on what marathon pace you run it, you may think that that's really fast, or you may think that's really
It's
slow.
superhuman for me.
But
I'm
that was
5:45, so yeah.
that was a great goal for me, and I was on track
There we. Oh,
to.
hey, look at that.
That's right. I was on track to hit that goal. And then with a couple miles left, it felt like somebody climbed on my back and then also grabbed the muscle in one of my legs and tied it in a knot and pulled tight.
Ouch.
And it was just brutal. So, believe it or not, I finished. I kept going. I tried to run a little bit, but most of those last 2 miles were a lot of walking. And I did have a friend there who caught me towards the end. The last few miles I was running, he had a bike and he had biked down to the city to to catch me, and he rode along with me through those really challenging miles.
Oh,
And I'm telling you what, I look back at that, and I'm so grateful for people like Joe. His name was Joe,
yeah.
and just the encouragement that that brings. In my second marathon, I ran at Baltimore, and I had the best training run of my life about 2 weeks before that marathon. I ran 20 miles on a trail that's not far from here, and I was feeling great. But right at the end of that, I felt something tweak in my leg.
At the end of the training run.
End of the
Oh
training run,
man.
and it was my IT band.
Oh
And
man.
so I really relaxed the next 2 weeks before the marathon, and I lined up for the Baltimore Marathon. And the Baltimore Marathon, you wouldn't think it, but it is a really hilly marathon. And I lined up with a pace group that was a little faster than I probably should have, and I went with them for a while. But then my IT band started flaring up, and around the midpoint, I was able to see my wife and kids. They were standing there cheering for me. They had a sign.
Oh, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. That's so cool.
It really was. And I'm so thankful for them, because the rest of the marathon was a combination of walking and running, because my IT band would not let me run for very long.
And for the
And
people that don't know what the IT band is, it's when you have an IT band injury, it's like knee pain on the outside of your knee, and it's
right, exactly. It's a ligament or a tendon, I guess, that runs from basically your butt down to your knee, right below
yeah,
your knee, and it runs along the side. And I don't know, it was not cooperating.
it's
But
scary. You think your leg is going to fall off when it's hurting.
right. I thought my knee was going to go. I thought, all kinds of things. But at any rate, I knew that I had to finish the race, and I knew that I had to cross the finish line running, because I wanted my kids to see me running across the finish line, and to
Yeah,
know that no matter what happens, you need to keep fighting, you need to keep going. And knowing that they were going to be around, encouraging me, cheering for me, definitely encouraged me and inspired me and motivated me to keep moving.
yes, yeah. It's just this whole analogy of marathon running and life, and I think of like where you said you felt that pain, and we have that. I'm going through some struggles in my life right now, and I kind of feel like that's where I'm at mile 16. Although we're just doing the math, I'm almost 40. Maybe I have a little more than that, but I sometimes I feel like I've gone through the hardest part, and I just the challenges, and then when you just think you can't take any more, the weight of the world falls on you. And without that cheering section, and of course without Jesus, without the friends on the bike, we'll call that the small groups and stuff like that, you're not going to finish because it's a long, lonely race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're going through some challenges at the moment, and we've talked before, but I can't emphasize the importance of having friends around you, family, church friends, church family, to just wrap their arms around you and to say, "Hey, I know you can't do this right now. Let me carry you." It was with my wife going through the challenges that she went through several years ago. It was hard initially to ask for help, but it was the best thing I could have ever
Yeah.
done, is to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, you know what? I can't do this on my own. I need somebody to cheer for me. I need somebody to bring me a meal. I need somebody to watch my kids, whatever it was. I need somebody just to sit down and listen to me, or to distract me from what's going on in my life for a few minutes, just so that I can have some sanity."
It's amazing, this world we live in with the internet, and my little podcast I've got going here, and the connections that I'm making, and you reached out to me. It was a powerful moment, just you reaching out to me and talking with me for like an hour and praying with me. And in that day, within like a 48 or 72 hour period, I had you, Ellery, and Steve Tesler, and there's some other people too. But I mean, I just right now just this wasn't scripted. So, but those three people, I'm just thinking within 2 or 3 days, reaching out to me, knowing I was going through something, and praying. And if without my podcast, or without my just kind of putting myself out there, I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know Steve. I wouldn't know Ellery. And I'm building up, and I know you're doing that through your platform as well. Putting yourself out there, being real, and building that network of people that can help build you up and get you through the cheering section or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And we all need that. We all need that in our lives. We need it. I'm thankful for the virtual relationships that I have. I'm hoping one day I'll be able to meet you face to face.
Yeah,
But I also know that there's importance of having face to face community as well. And so, I know that the listeners here are all podcast people. They like to listen to podcasts. They're probably like me and listen to 20 podcasts every day or
yeah,
whatever. But don't forget that you need to plug in face to face with people, and really, have the opportunity to spur them on, but also have the opportunity to be spurred
yeah.
on by them.
You said something about asking for help, which is something that I know me. I think Steve was the first guy. Steve Tesler. I know he's an avid listener. Hi, Steve. How are you? He said my name. He was the first guy that texted me and said, "Hey, can I call you?" And the old me of a few years ago would have been, "No, no, it's okay. It's okay." And but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna lean into this. And we talked for like an hour, and it was such a blessing. And then you reach out to me and Ellery, and then all of a sudden we open up. It's that asking for help, and we all need to do that. And that's somehow that fits with the book here, asking for help, and because that's why fellowship is there.
Absolutely. I think the other thing is just a reminder of, hey, we can't do it on our own, and we need to trust God, trust in the people around you. But one of my go-to verses is Proverbs 3:5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that verse. I don't think is guaranteeing that our path is going to be easy. We're going to
Yeah.
go through tough stuff in our life, but if we're trusting God, he'll see us through. I'm convinced of that.
Me too. Me too. I got to lean all into that. We start wrapping it up here. Your blog. We have barely even. I don't know, we haven't even talked about the blog. Well, you did the seven day challenge, or 7 week
Right.
challenge. Wait, what do we?
7 week
7 week
7 week
challenge.
stretch challenge. 7 week stretch challenge. Say that
Say
10
that. There
times
we go.
fast.
There.
So yeah, that's something that you can sign up for on my blog, and you'll get an email once a week that basically gives you a challenge, gives you a little thought to think about, and then challenges you. So the first week, as we alluded to earlier, is all about stilling yourself. And then I
Okay.
go from there. And I basically am using the letters of stretch.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
to challenge my readers.
And you're building a special link for the listeners of this show.
Right. So if you go to johnstolpe.com/Rocco, there will be a page there that you can sign up for the 7-week stretch challenge. There I go again. Or I've also, oh, not just or, and you can also sign up to get a free copy of the first chapter of my book, actually, the introduction and the first chapter.
Oh,
So
that's
I'd love
great.
to give that to your listeners.
That's
And
awesome.
obviously, if you want to do more with that, you can obviously go to Amazon and buy the book, but I'd love to give you a taste of what the book is about. It's an easy read. I've had many people tell me, wow, that you stated it so simply and yet in such a way that challenged me. And I think that, it might be something. You don't have to be a runner to read this book. You
Right,
really
right.
don't. There are a lot of running analogies, but believe me, the way, at least I'd like to think this, the way I wrote it, I think it can relate to anybody.
I agree. I agree. It definitely connects. I just looked. It's like 42 pages, and it's not like, oh, it's only 42 pages. It's 42 pages. There's most books we read are 200 pages, and there's 160 pages of blah 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 or repeat repeat. This is like quick and to the point, and it just tells you what you need to build that framework. It's well worth whatever. I don't know what it costs on Amazon. You were gracious to give me a, do we call it a reviewer copy? I don't know. Thank you for the copy, but it's well worth whatever, $5-6 or whatever it is on Amazon. I think I looked, it was $8, and then they slash the price. I don't know, whatever they do.
Yeah,
It's worth whatever the price is. So that's awesome, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then it's John, Jon. That's not
that's
John,
correct.
Jon Stolpe. And as you say, what did you say there? It's like Stolpe, like Dolpe, like Dopey.
Right.
Stolpe, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that. What other places? What's a good way for people? Other ways for people
I
to.
am on Twitter, at John Stolpe. I do have a Facebook page, John Stolpe Stretched. So if you
Oh,
look
cool.
that up, but really, if you come to my blog, that would be the best place to get plugged in and see what I'm doing on a regular basis. So johnstolpe.com, and of course, if you use that special page for Rocco, you can get the free chapter of the book, and you can also sign up for the stretch challenge.
That's
And
awesome.
I really think it's something that will encourage you. I think it's something that will stretch you. And
I I'm on your email list. I don't think I signed up for that, so I'm going to do that when I get off of Skype here. I'm going to sign up for
all
that.
right, that's what I like to hear. But one of my favorite sayings is, if you're not stretching or growing, you're not really living. And I think that we're called to keep growing and stretching and being challenged. And I hope that this 7-week challenge will encourage people to do that.
I'm excited about it. I want to ask you one more thing, and if you have anything else that you want to add, jump into. I like to. One of the things I get totally geeky about whenever I meet anybody, I want to know what podcasts they listen to. You don't have to tell me all 20, but what are some of your favorite podcasts, and what are you reading? Do you have any books to recommend?
Yeah, wow. Gosh, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I listen to the Dave Ramsey podcast every day just to get me some good financial wisdom. I listen to the Daily Audio Bible, which I mentioned before. I try to make that the first podcast I listen to every day.
Is that literally like reading the Bible, or do they like
Yep.
give it exposition of it?
Brian Harden is the host there, and he reads the Bible. He reads a section from the Old Testament, the New Testament, Psalms, and a verse or two from Proverbs every day.
Oh, okay.
And then he'll talk and expound on it a little bit, and then at the last few minutes of it is prayer requests that people have shared through the community.
Oh, wow.
So
And how
it's
long are those episodes usually?
usually 30 to 45 minutes.
Cool. Okay.
So for me, I run on the treadmill every morning, and so I can
There you
put that
go.
in and get fed a little bit while I'm running. So those are two. I listened to the one you mentioned. I listened to the Cliff Ravenscraft show, which he just renamed.
Yeah.
I listened to the Ray Edwards show. I listened to Michael Hyatt. I listened to just a lot of them. There are so many good podcasts
Yeah.
out there, and it's hard to say no to them. One of the ones that I've found recently is Life is a Marathon.
Oh,
I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
I don't know it.
Now the name of the host is eluding me. I should remember it, but you can look that up and put it in the show notes. But that's a good one. It's an encouraging, positive thought for the day. I don't think he posts every day, but a few times a week.
Cool.
And it's a guy who's gone through tough times and is finding the positive out of it. So I think you would relate to it, and what we've talked about a little bit, both during the interview and before, I think would relate to you.
Oh, for sure. What about some books? Any books to recommend?
Sure. There's a lot that I've read.
I'll put you on the spot.
My favorite book last year was actually Traveling Mercies by Anne Lamott. It's more of a memoir, and it's a little messy, but it's a great story. It's a great read. I think it will challenge the way you think about faith and about what it looks like to have a relationship with Jesus. So that's one that I would definitely recommend. I read a lot of leadership books, so there's a lot that I could probably touch on there. I'm reading right now H3 Leadership by Brad Lomnick, and so far it's
you cut out there for a second. Did you say it cut out for a second? Sorry, it was Brad Lomnick, right?
Yeah, Brad Lomnick, who is associated with the Catalyst podcast.
I was going to say that's another really good podcast.
Yeah, a Relevant podcast is a good podcast too. That kind of keeps you culturally intact or up to speed with things. There was another one I was going to recommend. One of my favorite books from the last 5 years or so was The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. And that's all about prayer. So that would certainly be one I would recommend. And maybe On Track, Life Lessons from the
There you go. I love it. I love it. I remember we talked about Circle Maker last time we were talking. So I'm glad you remembered, or I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got to go. I've got to get that.
It's a good book. I mean, you may not agree with every single thing he says, but I'll tell you what, it'll challenge you to think differently about prayer. And it's probably one I need to go back and read again, maybe on an annual basis.
Oh, I like it. That's great. John, this has been really cool. I've had a good time, and we're gonna have to have you back on because we have so much more we could talk about. I know, we'll definitely have you back on for Guatemala, but I mean, we could just talk. I find that with my guests, I'm like, I could just talk forever, and this is great. I've been so blessed with these amazing people, and John Stolpe. I mean, what a great score! What a great guest! I love it.
Well, thank you so much. It's really, like I said at the beginning, it's a privilege and honor to be part of your show and to see you developing as a podcaster. I've been listening now for a few months, and it's neat to see where you're going and see how you just wrestle out loud with what God is teaching you. So keep doing it. Keep stretching. Keep figuring things out, and keep telling your story. You've got something worth sharing.
Thanks, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's been great, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.